Welcome to my podcast, The Laura Dowling Experience. Many of you will know me from my Instagram page at Fabulous Pharmacist, where I love to shine a light on topics that people normally shy away from. This is my podcast with Mr. Mark Jordan. Mark, like me, is a pharmacist and I am absolutely buzzing after my conversation with him. He drove down from Mayo on a dark and blustery night and we had an amazing conversation about pharmacy, about him spiralling out of control as a youngster, about the legalization of cannabis, about microdosing with psilocybin, and so much more. You guys are going to love this podcast. He is an amazing guest. I just can't tell you how excited I was speaking with another pharmacist so openly and so honestly about all those topics. It's a real eye-opener for everyone. So I really hope you enjoy this show. To support the Laura Dowling Experience, please check out my sponsors in the podcast notes below. Enjoy. Mark, I am so happy to finally meet you in the flesh. You're my first pharmacist that I've had on the podcast.
What a privilege. What a privilege.
I've had loads of doctors. It's about time we got some drug pushers on. Now, tell me about yourself.
What do you want to know?
So why did you pick pharmacy? I suppose I'd love to know another pharmacist's view on pharmacy, the profession in general.
How many pharmacists do you know that just ended up in pharmacy?
I know a lot of pharmacists that just ended up
in pharmacy.
That's yeah.
Me.
Okay.
It's me. I was not invited back to my secondary school. We'll call it that.
Okay.
In Castlebar.
Okay.
Now, I was given an ultimatum really when I was about 16. I was thrown out once.
Okay.
And I was on, then I was thrown out again and they put me on a thing called daily probation. So it meant that every 40 minutes I had to have a little logbook signed by the teachers.
And why is that?
I was buck wild.
Okay.
I was too smart for my own good. I was keeping fun company, good company. And I had a lot of friends, but none of us were up to any good.
Okay.
An awful lot of us were bright, but none of us really applied ourselves. I still had like high expectations of myself, but there was even higher expectations of me at home. I was the first and I was the eldest of the grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so I was given an ultimatum by my mum. I was working in Dunn's in Castlebar and I was getting to the point where I wasn't going to be invited back to my part-time job in Dunn's either.
All right, you were that bold.
Oh yeah, no, I had an answer for everything. That was my problem, and I believed I was considerably brighter than whoever was telling me to do something. I thought I believed I knew more than them, and I couldn't be told. So,
and when you say bold, and were you just? Were you thieving, or were you what were you doing? Were you just
anything like anything? You could catch me in anything. You could catch me in you could catch me in the neighbour's brother's car at 4:00 in the morning. You could catch me. There was one time around Christmas time I came home and I was followed in the gate by the guards, and all I remember is my father at the top of the hill with his hands on his hip, the silhouette of the sitting room light behind him, looking down at the blue lights.
Okay.
Like I was always in trouble.
Okay, and were you in trouble as a young boy as well, in primary school?
No, I was a good kid.
Okay.
I was a good kid, and I tried. I was just a bit disillusioned by it because I wasn't very academic. I wasn't a good academic student. But as time went by, I was more. I don't know. I was just lost my way a bit. But I remember this particular day, my mother gave me an ultimatum anyway, and she said, you either wait in Dunn's and you wait in that school that you're in, that secondary school, and you survive it, or you come out of it and we'll send you to Limerick to do your leaving cert. But you better pull the finger out.
Okay.
So that's what happened. I went in, cleaned up my act, did the interview to get into Tutorial College in Limerick, sat with the two Johns. They asked me why I was thrown out. I said, bored of it, and they concluded that I was bright, but that I needed direction. Which was fine. And I got lots of it there. And I flourished. I did excellent.
Okay. But was it like a military school style? Was it like, was it?
Tutorial College it's a small grind school.
Okay.
In the middle of Limerick.
A boarding school, obviously, yeah?
Yeah. Like people would stay in digs, or I was lucky. Mum and Dad put me up in an apartment across the road on my own. Dad would come and stay with me from time to time. A fair bit, in fairness to him. And I had a fantastic year there. I had a great year. But what happened was I nearly overachieved. I exceeded the expectations that people had of me. I knew I was going in with the ambition to maybe do medicine, or my dad's a vet, so I had an interest in veterinary. I really wanted to do veterinary, but I was dissuaded from it because of Dad's experiences. Dad was determined that I wasn't doing veterinary.
Okay.
And then pharmacy was just on the list. And it was shortly after the strikes, so it was manageable points.
Okay.
Whatever it was, like 540 that year or something.
Yeah.
And
did you study in Trinity?
No. So this is where I got rocky again. I went to Bradford, and on the rechecks, so I got into Bradford in the UK. We'd gone over, me and Dad, and looked at the university, and the guy that was in charge of it was a guy from Sligo. So we'd met him, and that's amazing thunder.
Do you
I don't
hear
know if
that
anybody
thunder?
else hears.
If anyone can pick up that microphone, it is a dark, cold, wet night here in Dublin, and it's thunder and lightning outside.
Yeah,
it is.
It's pretty cool out there at the moment. But so that guy was in charge of it, and we went and met him, and he impressed us. So it was pretty much decided at that stage that if it all went belly up, I'd definitely get pharmacy in Bradford.
Okay.
So that's where I was going.
Okay.
And I got in, but my rechecks come out whenever the rechecks come out, a month after the results. And I came up a whack of points, came up like 20 or 30 points. So I ended up getting Cork, which if it wasn't for my father, I wouldn't have done anything about. He was cute enough to defer it for a year to see how I got on. Offered to bring me home, but I wouldn't come home. And because I was having too much fun out there, pound pints and fucking 50 cent a piece. Okay. They completely, it was a disaster out there.
So I had a first year like that, as in I went Trinity, but I went wild in first year, and I think it was because I just studied so hard to get the points for Trinity and got in there, and it was a 40-hour lecture week, like 9 to 5.
Same.
9 to 6, your lectures in the morning, your labs, and I just went wild. Well, wild insofar as just didn't go to lectures. Thought I was too clever to go to lectures. Didn't realise everyone else didn't even have the wherewithal to remember that actually everyone else in there had studied just as hard as me to get in there. And obviously if they were going to lectures, they were going to get their exams. So yeah, I failed miserably first year, but I got the rechecks. But I don't think I had as wild a time as you. Yeah.
Well, I suppose like your mum and dad were local enough. Yeah. Were they?
Yeah, I lived at home.
Yeah, there was nobody watching me.
Yeah, okay.
And I took full advantage of that. I remember there was a place that rumour has it Simon Cowell owned a stake in this particular chain of clubs in Northern England. And on Tuesdays, it was their quiet night. So to attract people in, they'd do happy hour, which was half price, but it was already half price when you got there. So like where a pint might be £2 on a Wednesday, it was £1 on a Tuesday, but for a particular hour of that night, it'd be 50 pence. So you could get a rack of 7 shots. So we'd end up, and it might be say £7 on a Tuesday, it'd be £3.50 or £7 for 2 racks. You'd end up with 14 shots.
Oh my God.
And it was just...
That's wild.
Start to finish, it was just a disaster. The whole... the only thing that I came out of England with was a problem with drink.
Okay.
And I said, hung around with lads that were buck wild in Castlebar. And I remember getting into trouble the Christmas that I was in England. I came home, got into trouble in Castlebar, and the lad that I got into trouble with, he was wild with me, but he turned around to me in the middle of this disaster and said to me, you are something else. You're a different animal since you went back to England.
What? Can I ask
So,
you what the trouble was?
It was the year of the big freeze.
Yeah.
So there was a half inch of ice on the back roads that we'd most frequently be travelling, and we were in a questionably barely legal car that had bald tyres, and we were being irresponsible.
Yeah.
And he got into a tip on his own. Like, we were on our own in this old post van, but we got into a tip in it, and sure, you know, an argument ensued when we got out of the car.
Okay.
And whose fault it was and who should have been paying attention. And sure, look, you know, I said some things that I regret, but you know, all's forgiven now. Poor old Mick, he was a great bit of stuff. But like he said to me at the time, and the two of us were as bad as one another. But
Yeah.
I remember, I'll never forget him saying to me, "You are a different breed since you went to England."
Okay.
I lost control. You see, the problem was I was completely adrift and I was on my own. I hadn't, no more than yourself. I was just regimented. I knew what I was doing when I was doing it, right down to the minute in tutorial college. I got to England and nobody was watching me.
Yeah.
And since the day my mum gave me the ultimatum of pull up your socks or get out, you know, I did as I was told, you know, and I followed the system. So I just lost the run of myself. And then because the classes in the UK were so enormous, and I was the only Irish person in the class. I was the only person that was interested in the things that I was interested in. Like, I just found it incredibly hard to fit in. So there was a privately owned pub behind where I lived, and I just spent all my time there.
Okay.
And the people I socialised with were 10 and 15 and 20 and 30 years older than me, and they had some bad habits and tough, tumultuous times themselves, like, when I was hanging around with them.
And you were a young lad. You were only, what, 18?
19?
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
And when you say you came back with a drink problem, did you have to detoxify? Was it a...
No, I just had, it was more so my attitude towards drink. There was no such thing as going out for a pint. Like me and Ola can go now. Like on Sunday, we went for a glass of Guinness and our dinner.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Ola, by the way, is Mark's very beautiful wife.
Yeah, she's
a cracker.
I'm batting. She is a cracker.
You are punching.
Yeah.
You're a good looking man.
Yeah, no. But
she's a total babe.
She is an absolute right. Yeah. Yeah, she is. Yeah. I am, and I tell her every day.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well, isn't that beautiful that you tell her every day?
Yeah,
She knows that.
Yeah,
it's fab.
Yeah, I do tell her every day. I make sure to.
So you can go for your glass of Guinness now with your wife, and you can enjoy it.
Yeah, but I couldn't then.
Okay.
I couldn't then. If I went into a place and I bought 6 cans, the 6 cans would be gone. I'd be back for more. It was just I when I was about 13 or 14, I discovered the Guns N' Roses album Appetite for Destruction. No, I was younger. I was still in primary school, 11 or 12.
Right.
And I was just hell bent on rock and roll and fast living.
And were you boozing that young as well, like 13,
No,
14?
I would have been. I probably by the time I was 15 anyway.
And too much, like
yeah, too much, yeah,
knacker drinking and stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. All of that.
Like hedges,
bushing,
like.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And do you think, like, was there any underlying issue that you weren't dealing with? Was there any kind of anxiety there that you were self-medicating with, do you think, or anything like that?
Incredibly anxious young man.
Okay.
Didn't know what I was doing, where I was going. Tall orders to probably live up to. And like I'd be guilty now of thinking about this a lot, you know. I'd analyse this a lot. So I've no answer for you. But because I don't regret any of it. The only reason I regret anything that I went through with respect to depression or anxiety or how wild I was when I was a teen, like, it's only because the people around me, it was really difficult for them, particularly my parents or people that were close to me or my friends. Like, I didn't turn the corner till I was 25, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I really was liable to make any decision at any time, and it would be the obscure left of field decision. And I could turn up anywhere. You wouldn't know. You just wouldn't know with me what I'd do next.
So you came back from Bradford, and did you go into UCC then?
Yeah, I wasn't invited back to Bradford. My attendance was crap.
Oh, okay. So did you have to go into first year again then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they let you in?
Yeah, they let me in. I didn't bother telling them that I spent the year in England, you know.
Okay.
Much to their dismay later on.
I can imagine. So how did you get on there then?
I was buck wild there as well. Yeah. I was a liability, you know. Like, I was a lot. I'm still a lot now.
I'm getting that impression. You're great though.
But
it's great that you're talking about it, because I think there's lots of, like, I had John Lonergan on from, you know, he was the governor of Mount Joy.
Such a great podcast.
Like, and he was talking about, and I've got a psychiatrist coming on now too, and about even just undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
And the fact that it can cause such turmoil in people's lives, and it's, you know, it goes undiagnosed for years and years and years, and often in young boys it's seen as impulsive hyperactivity. You know, they make really rash decisions, they do dumb stuff all the time, and they continue to do it no matter how much they're told they shouldn't. And then a lot of them can start self-medicating, they end up in prison, they end up making really poor decisions in life.
The thing that really stuck out from that podcast was how he continually referred to the vast majority of people as decent people.
Yeah.
Decent people. And he kept saying, like, they just made one bad choice.
Yeah.
And when I was actually listening to that, I was, because we'd spoken and we decided that we were going to meet up. And I was thinking, geez, like, there was so many times that it could have gone either way for me. It could have gone either way so many times.
Yeah.
So lucky. But as I said, the only thing I'd change about it is it could have happened better, or it mightn't have happened at all. Not for me, but for the people around me. Like, I keep thinking of that John Cleese joke. Do you know the one where he says, you know, being dead isn't difficult for you, you're dead. It's difficult for the people around you. It's a little bit like being stupid. Well, like, you know, I imparted an awful lot of difficulty in the people around me, like, you know.
Okay.
So, like, that, and that's...
But are they all over that now, you know? Or?
Yeah, no, my family never held any of that against me. They gave me everything, like, yeah. And I, to this day, I'm blessed. Like, we were talking about Ola. Like, Ola puts up with, you know, I'm a much better person now, but I'm a lot, like, you know, I don't sleep very much.
Okay.
I work a lot.
Yeah.
I've got very high standards and expectations for myself. I hyperanalyze everything. I'm very critical of myself. I'm not polite to myself. Ola's this, like, very pure, down to her soul, good person.
Yeah.
So she's like, we're like yin and yang.
But you don't see yourself as a pure, down to earth, good person?
No, I see myself as somebody that has a lot to learn. Yeah.
Okay.
And I see myself as somebody...
self-criticism, is this something that you need to work on? Just...
It is, yeah, it is. And that's why I like being with her.
Yeah.
She allows me to be myself. She will never let me be critical or nasty to myself without challenging it, which is good. But she'll still allow me be me so that I'm comfortable, which gives me the space to grow in her presence, because I value her personality and her great character traits so much that I recognise how much I can learn just from being around her, like.
Yeah.
And it's like, it sounds absolutely mad. But
no, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. People, you
really
learn from people that you're with. But I think also you gravitate toward, like, the yin and yang is very true. I think you gravitate towards people that are different to you because they give you something that you don't have yourself. Yeah. Be it in friends or in, you know, loving relationships as well. No, definitely, you know. Yeah. I absolutely think that, because it's almost like, you know, they talk about the piece of the missing jigsaw or something. That's 100%. You know, that's it.
And like the funny thing about it is as I was going through all of this stuff, like, it was in Bradford, came back to Ireland, went into Cork, did first year, survived first year, loads of repeats, but got into second year.
It's just like me, like, literally
disaster.
And it was so boring, the subjects in first year, like, it's, you know, physics, chemistry,
me? You get in there
biology.
and they say everything you know is a lie.
Yeah.
Forget it. By the way, we expect you to know all of this by tomorrow so that we can actually get down to business. You're like, what?
I know. And if you haven't done, like, the physics before or something like that, no matter how good you are at anything, it's just, you know, you need to be, it's so much work for an 18-year-old.
And this is it. Like, I do lots of coaching now with young pharmacists and pharmacists in college, like, and how to switch gears between the regurgitative exercise that is the leave insert and the competence exercise that is university and academia, they're different. Like,
Yeah.
like you're, the volume of information, the depth of understanding that you need in those lectures, no matter how obtuse they are or how much you tell yourself you're never going to use it, you still have to be competent at it in the exam, because the exams are worded in a way that aren't going to allow you, just regurgitate the information like you did the year before in the Leaving Cert when you were in the top 0.3 percentile of the country, So,
and are there a lot of pharmacists, young pharmacists struggling, or young student pharmacists struggling that come to you for those?
I wouldn't say a lot. Some of them will come to me with the wrong idea that like we might do grinds for them.
Okay.
When really that's an application. The scary part is the people that are qualified that come to me.
Disillusioned.
Just first year out, like.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? Like,
I know. What do you tell them?
Nobody's come to save you.
Yeah.
That's what I tell them all, like, because that's what saved me,
And are you happy you did pharmacy?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Do you like it as a job, community pharmacy?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the time I do. I'd say, but I have to be honest, like 60% of the time I do.
Yeah.
40% of the time, and last year it would have been 20% of the time I do. Mm-hmm. But like we'll get into all of that,
Yeah.
Like it just, that's the nature of the beast now at the moment in pharmacy, and I don't honestly think there's enough pharmacists in the public arena, or that have access to public, that feel they can talk about it, or that they should talk about it.
Yeah.
Or that, they'll be listened to. Because pharmacy in the community is a facility. And the problem is that it's nearly seen as a charitable facility, when really what the pharmacist is dealing with as an owner manager or as a manager of a chain store or something is more than that. You're dealing with the legislative role of a pharmacist, the regulatory role, the clinical role, the finances role, the management role. It's not just this one-stop shop that you go to after the doctors. And the thing is that pharmacy, no matter where you look, is managing to keep all of the balls in the air, but has been let down by what's happening in the background all of the time.
Yeah.
All of those balls that contribute to the mess of pharmacy, they're letting down pharmacy by just existing. Like, it's a really, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, 100%.
It's such a hard thing to explain to the general public, like the public at large, because it and nobody believes this thing anymore. Like, you hear some pharmacists giving out, like, they think we just put a label on a box. I don't really believe that there's very many people out there that still think that that's all that happens in a pharmacy.
Yeah, no, I don't either. It's been...
I think that that's too harsh. Like, we're some of the most wealthy, educated people on the face of the planet in this little island. Mm-hmm. We're better than that. We know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like I don't think that all engineers go around fucking designing road trains all the time. Like, it's just not what happens.
Yeah.
But like, I just think that the overall system in Ireland, like, is so fragmented and fractured that it's nearly beyond repair. And
it's not really fit for purpose, is it? It's not fit for the clinical role that we should be doing. So what I found, obviously I'm community pharmacist 20 years. And I came out all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and loving what I was doing, really genuinely loving it.
Were you happy being a pharmacist?
I was very happy being a pharmacist, and I was happy with, and I didn't mind the shift work and, the weekends, because I got the days off during the week and stuff like that. But over time, I think all the kind of bureaucracy that goes with it just kept piling on and piling on and piling on. And it's just additive to the day job. And like where there is, I suppose, room to do other things in pharmacy, there is very much a stop level, as in you get to supervising pharmacist after being qualified for 3 years, and unless you decide you want to be a regional manager in a massive chain, that's it. There's nowhere else to go, and your salary doesn't increase. So, and this isn't about bitching about salaries or anything like that, but you might come out, and for a graduate, you'd be on a very high salary compared to your peers, right? That may come out of business school or marketing or something like that. But a guy stayed on that salary for 20 odd years, just maybe percentile increments over the years with, the standard of living increase, etc. If even. So, if I was to compare the salary that I left my recent job on compared to what I came out with 20 years previously, there was probably a 10 grand difference.
Yeah.
Isn't that, and that's crazy with all the knowledge that I had,
Kilt explaining that if somebody has a brain like your brain in today's society, they go off and they become top percentile in Google. And suddenly you say, you might meet the lads for a pint at Christmas and you say, where's Joe that was doing accounts and coke?
Yeah.
Say, she's not here. He got offered some gig, management or something in Japan. They're losing to Pepsi.
Yeah.
And this is literally what our brightest are going doing. They're looking at, when I think I was one of the last people of a generation that came out of the Leaving Cert believing they had to be a something. That's not a thing anymore.
No, it isn't. And young pharmacists aren't thinking that either. And there's the locum situation that we can see nowadays as well. They're not really interested in community pharmacy roles.
I don't care.
And I can understand why. And it isn't about salary either and the differences either. It's about the fact that if you're doing the same job day in, day out for 20 odd years, and that's why I started the whole Instagram thing, because I wanted to kind of diversify or show what my knowledge to kind of other people, and that kind of way. So
you're the same as me. It's nearly a case of use it or lose it. And I found, for example, I worked so hard at understanding chemistry, so bad at it for so long, that I ended up getting really good at it, and then within 18 months of being really, really good at it, I'd forgotten most of it, like a language. And I just thought it was such a poetic thing that it was fleeting, the information that I had, that I'd worked so hard to get.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I don't use any of the rest of the stuff that's still sticking, I'm done. I'm bound to the depths of the dispensary ticking.
Yeah.
That's it. And I just, that's what nearly drove me to absolute madness last year,
Okay.
I just couldn't anymore. It wasn't the pandemic or anything but no more than everybody else, I was just evaluating my life and saying, what is this?
I know, because whereas our parents may have been happy to do the same job for the rest of their lives potentially, or maybe we just expect more nowadays. Maybe we're just not satisfied with sticking in the same job for years and years and years.
But I think it's circumstantial though. My dad would often say to me, he'd say, we had nothing, we went to college. It was mad. We were going to college. There's people should have gone to college that didn't go to college, and we went to college.
Yeah.
And jeez, that was mighty. And he'd say to me then, I always thought, if I can put a house there and I can run it and I can educate my kids, we're on a winner. And my take on that is that it's not that I am dissatisfied with the level of achievement that, say, my father has achieved throughout his life, because it's enormous.
Yeah.
I just feel that there's an obligation. I think an awful lot of young people would feel this, that there's an obligation on you to make good on the opportunities that you got, just like they did. But it's just that their circumstances, or the gap between them now and them previous, it's more tangible. You can see it. There was a nothing and now there's a something.
Yeah.
Where there was always a something at some stage for me in my life. I was always going to be a something. I was given the opportunity to be a something.
Yeah.
But that's my point. I think I was one of the last of a generation that had to be a thing. And people don't have to be a thing anymore. You can go out and you can use your ability you know, academic or otherwise, you can just be bright now and do very well for yourself, you know, or you can be naturally good at marketing yourself and decide to be an electrician and be the busiest electrician in Dublin.
Yeah.
You know, or you could just be the most popular electrician in Dublin and next thing you're on Morning AM.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
it
the way
is. It is
just
the way it
different.
is.
It's completely different set of rules.
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. So let's take you back to college, and you got through it, but with hardship, or
so I repeated
mental anguish, or
repeated first year by going to college in Cork. So I had to start in first year again, and then got into second year after a load of repeats. Got into third year after a load of repeats. They tried to get rid of me in second year.
Did they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. I had to go to a pass fail, like there's like a board.
Yeah.
And it's really demoralising because you'd be sitting there and you're a percentile away from getting 100%, and I'm sitting beside you waiting to go in and see the same board, but I'm a percentile away from
getting the boot. Okay.
So like, so this is post repeats. So like, if I fail this oral exam, which is technically an oral exam, for this subject, I have to go back that year, repeat that subject on its own for the year. So they didn't catch me in second year, but they got me in third year. So I repeated third year, which was good because all the way through.
Third year's a nasty year to repeat because it was the hardest. You didn't come out with the recent. You didn't have the combined learning. You were one of the old school year, like me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But so that repeat year was actually good because the year before it I was medicated up to my eyes, like so I had a major breakdown in probably like March 2012, and I didn't right the ship until early 2013. So
what was that about? What happened to you?
So heading into first year, because of drink, I was in a blustery town called Balladreen, and I was drinking with a fella that I used to work in a meat factory, so I was drinking with that fella. And we went out and I had too much to drink and I slipped and jig acting, as my father would say, slipped and made absolute bits of my leg, broke my leg. So he had to drive an hour, come and collect me at God's hour of the morning, abandon my car that I'd driven there and bring me home, drop me off the hospital, which meant that I ended up with a load of screws and pins in my leg. So I had to go to the orthopedics a week or 10 days later and get an operation on it. Those screws and pins didn't come out until about 18 months or 2 years later. But during that time, because I couldn't exercise, like even though I was mad in England, I was boxing a lot. I was very physically active and it was just another outlet. So I was used to being fit and active. And I piled on the weight. Like I'm 5 foot nothing and I was nearly 17 stone.
Okay.
So I was 16 something.
Okay.
My heaviest.
Yeah.
And when you say 16 something, that means you're 17. It's just you're 16 something the day you bother to weigh yourself. You know?
Okay.
So, I ended up in an absolute quagmire. And it was a combination of the weight, drinking too much again, and just been unkind to myself. You know, I just wasn't. You know, I was back on the downward spiral, and it was just this self-loathing kind of, you know, just bad. Like everything was bad, you know, and I had absolutely no ability to see the wood for the trees and say to myself, well, maybe things would be good if you try it. Tell yourself they might be good. Some of these days. But I just wasn't, and I was hyped up on caffeine all the time. I was, you know, couldn't sleep at night. I was continuously exhausted. I was failing my exams. That was feeding into it. And eventually, on the lead up to the exams, I went to a counsellor in the college. And I told her all about my experiences in England, which were rough and, you know, getting kicked out of apartments and the trouble that I'd find myself in. And ultimately, she said, you know, you need to see a doctor. You need help. But I just ignored it. And to cut a long story short, my father found out eventually.
Okay.
And when he found out, I was brought to the family physician. She ended up prescribing pretty much immediately escitalopram.
Okay.
Within 10 days, I was on 20 milligrams. And then that progressed to escitalopram and mirtazapine. Mirtazapine was helping, but
do you want to tell people what the escitalopram and mirtazapine are?
Go for it.
Because people don't probably know what you're talking about.
I forget that we're here, you know.
Yeah, so escitalopram is an antidepressant generally given for generalized anxiety and depression, and mirtazapine can be given for a number of reasons. So why were you given it?
I was given it because I just wasn't sleeping.
Okay.
And I was still having issues with the potential of harming myself, really, like, was
Did you have suicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we didn't talk about it too much at home. Like, me and Dad had our own language. It'd be Dad that kind of, you know, would talk to me the most about stuff like this, because it was really hard, my mum, like. But, you know, ultimately what happened was like, we got to a stage where there was other things like Teviquel or quetiapine 25 was added in then.
So that's antipsychotic?
Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know.
That was added in PRN at night, so when required at night. Didn't really have much use for that now. And that's where the wheels really come off with the medication train. Because
the side effects of all of those as well can really affect you.
Yeah. So,
and do you mind me asking you, apart from drinking, did you have
recreational
recreational drugs?
No.
Okay.
Not at that stage. And this is then where I think our underfunded health system let me down. Mm-hmm. Like it lets a lot of people down, by no real fault to the individuals that are trying their best, that are the professionals that keep the thing in motion. Mm-hmm. You have to understand, at the time I had big stretched ears, I had long hair, I wore snapbacks, so snapback hats with obscenities written on the inside of the brim. I was not pleasant to look at, and I was not going to be pleasant to you. I wore low-cut tops, my tattoos were all on show. I just smoked and swore and lived on caffeine, and when I wasn't doing that, I was probably on the beer.
Okay.
I was just buck wild, like.
Okay.
But it was all just it was just part of the act, you know. It was just part of the whatever persona I had at the time and whatever I was living out, you know. Mm-hmm. But I'd turn up to meet counsellors or psychiatrists, and they'd be like, "This fella's, you're on recreational drugs. Tell us the truth."
Okay.
And I was like, "I'm for once not.
This is me in my normal state.
I know I'm a lot, okay, but I came here."
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And the really annoying thing about it was that I was really fortunate. I was sent to private centres and private people. And the last person I went to, I was starting to ask questions at home. And this is why I'm so grateful for my mum and dad. When I was asking questions, they didn't say to me, "No, be a good boy now and take your tablets." They listened. They really listened to me. They went out of their way. And I was obviously a rambling mess at the time. And he sent me to one last psychiatrist who was a friend of a friend, and this big old regal house. And pulled up at the house, and the lady said, "Will you take off your shoes?" And I thought, this is deep. This is metaphorical. Leave your problems at the door. I like it.
Okay.
And then she said, Can you sit down here? And I was sitting in a big oldie worldy library. Mm. And then she said, "Okay, come with me," after about 10 minutes of sweating me out. And then she just told me that I was obviously on drugs. And I was just like, do you know what? This is, nobody's going to help me.
Yeah.
And I know that for an awful lot of people, that's the knife edge point where it can go one of two ways. Because I had the support system at home and I was encouraged, Dad rang me on the way back from that appointment. And it was a beautiful, bright day, lovely morning. And he said, how did it go? And I said, I'm going to sort this out. He said, nobody's going to come and help me. I said, I'm done with this, finished. So with the assistance of everybody around me, including the GP, came off all of the medication. There wasn't much of it now at that stage, in fairness.
Do you think the medication was affecting you negatively?
In my specific circumstances, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I have reservations about talking about this part of my story about is because I don't want people, as a healthcare professional, to believe that it's a one size fits all. You know, I don't want anybody to make decisions based off my personal experience.
Well, I think it's really important to say that, you know, everyone is individual. And we are by no means suggesting that taking psychiatric medication is not worthwhile or doesn't work for people.
Correct.
But the reality is it doesn't work for some people, and you are in that category. And I know people that are in that. I know family members that are in that category. So I think that's really important. I think that it's important that we say that, but that we don't get given out to for actually telling the truth, which is important. You know,
and like I think ultimately what will happen in the next 10 to 15 years when it comes to these particular medicines and how we deal with depressive illness and general anxiety disorder and, you know, mental health and mental illness as a whole, it's we're going to start categorizing and defining people differently and recognizing that people are different in their individual, you know, just them as individuals and how different we actually
It'll be more tailored because it's very generic the way it's done now. It's, you know, let's try
categorization. You know, this doesn't work. Well, tried the SSRI, let's try an SNRI or try a different SSRI.
Let's add in the antipsychotic.
And let's just pigeonhole this individual based on what we perceive to be true, which in my case happened to be my outward persona, which led them, in fairness to them, wasn't their fault so much as it was mine, but led them to conclude that I was probably abusing recreational drugs on the street, which I wasn't, which was then contributing to whatever problems I had at the time. Ultimately, I was lucky. I came out, Dad and Mum encouraged me, dealt with it, got the rods and pins taken on my leg, which meant I had more flex in the bone, which meant I could run, went back boxing, back cycling, got into bodybuilding, powerlifting, never looked back. And I use that now as my, you know, that's my, I don't like to say coping mechanism, but like that's my grounding mechanism.
Okay.
And I'm having a character building day, you know, leave the guts on the floor in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, come back out, you've got a bit of clarity on it. Write the things down that you can, you know, write all the problems down, cross the things out you can't control, think about the things you can control, come up with a solution and forget about it. And that's ultimately what I like to do now. So that got me then into third year, finished out third year, flew fourth year. I had lecturers ask me, was I cheating? I absolutely killed fourth year.
I still have, you know the way some people say that they have nightmares about sitting there leaving cert? I don't, because I aced the leaving cert. I have nightmares that I'm sitting in my final exams, pharmacology in particular, and I hadn't studied, and I still wake up at the age of 42 sometimes. Once a year maybe I'll have one of those horrible dreams where I'm sitting in the in my pharmacy finals, because I actually swore to myself I would never ever like go and do another course after that. I just found fourth year so tough.
I swore the same to myself, but nobody was stopping me.
Yeah.
I was a machine. I used to walk up and down Western Road listening to Les Brown and Eric Thomas and Tony Robbins. I believed it. I used to do the breathing exercises. I used to get up at 5 a.m. and train. I had very regimented. I went back to what I was doing in the Leaving Cert.
Okay.
Very regimented.
Yeah, you knew
what I was doing. But what I did was I timetabled my recreational time, which meant at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, I was having a pint. But by 12 or 1 o'clock, I was finished having my pints. I was going home. And on Sunday, I did nothing. No, I lived on my own. So nobody rang, nobody knocked, nobody called, didn't do anything. I'd go for a sauna. And I just lived and died by it.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that like I'm surrounded by at the moment is some of my pals, some of the lads back home be a bit younger than me. And there might be 8 or 9 years between us. And they really rely on that type of regimented regime to get them through the week. Like, and I often,
is that a bloke's thing?
I often wonder, is it? That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
You know, is that why men do, they do well in the army and they do well, with like the timetable? Like, yeah, give us something to do.
Let me get the flag.
Build something.
Is there a flag over there?
Yeah. Because, we're built differently. And this is why, I often have conversations about how can we have equality when actually our brains work completely differently. Do you know that way? And I'm not getting into the whole feminist equality. I just mean in general.
Yeah.
We're such different beasts.
Science is coming out. Yeah. There's no place in the modern world for science. No. You should know that by now. No. We learned nothing in the last 3 years.
I'll be cancelled. But I think that is because men and boys, and I have 3 boys and I have 2 brothers. I'm living. I've been surrounded by men all my life. Love them. They get me in trouble. But I just think men they're task-driven animals, whereas we're more. And even just if you have a problem when you go to a man, he wants to fix it for you. Whereas we just want to bitch about it and just have it out. Yeah,
Ola doesn't complain about much, even though she's got a lot to complain about when she's hanging around with me. But she often says that, she'd say to me, such and such about today at work, or I was talking to this person. I'd be like, okay, here's what we're going to do to fix that. She's like, geez, man, relax. Won't be a problem tomorrow. I'm just telling you about it.
That's the same in my house every day. Absolutely. It's so funny, isn't it? We're different beasts.
Yeah.
So you did 4th year, you aced it.
Yeah.
They thought you were cheating, you did so well. And then you got into pre-reg and everything went tits up again, did it?
Did great in the pre-reg. Settled back into Castlebar. Got a job locally. So did well in Castlebar. Nothing really to report. It was pretty uneventful. Stuck at the training, stuck at the system. I kept employing the system. And as long as I felt that, right down to what I was eating at 11 o'clock in the morning, as long as the system was being followed, we were good.
Okay.
Everything was fine.
Right.
Look, that's not to say that I didn't have minor meltdowns in the middle of it. Still was making brash and wild decisions, but they were just less frequent.
Okay.
Whereas now, I make brash and wild decisions, but they'd be like this morning at 6:03, decided I was going to do my tax returns, and I made a complete dose out of it. That was brash and wild, but luckily that's as brash and wild as it gets.
Okay.
Rang the accountant, he gave out to me, and that was the end of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I just find that, where I at 11 or 12 decided that I wanted an appetite for destruction, and I followed it until I was about 25, just completely based on being completely enamoured with that lifestyle, and I completely glamorized maybe Guns N' Roses and all of that type of stuff. It had a huge impact on me, and I just thought it was cool. That's just what you do.
But you think it was underlying, you did talk about self-loathing there, and the fact that you're not
it all fed in. Yeah.
Is that all feeding into that?
It is. But when I say it was an appetite for destruction, I think it's more of an appetite, I've evolved to have an appetite for, progress.
Okay.
Now, I recognise those flaws. Yeah. I'm all right with it.
Yeah.
I don't mind that I'm critical of myself.
Yeah.
I wish it was easier on the people around me, but I'm not worried about it myself.
Yeah.
One of the things that you'd said to me about recreational drug use.
Yeah.
One of the things that stopped me from doing magic mushrooms or anything with psilocybin in it.
Yeah.
That could give, for everybody out there listening, a thing called ego death, where you just have this profound experience and you come out the far side of it believing, that there's more to life, we'll call it.
Yeah.
The only reason I've always shied away from that is because I understand that my approach to life means that my wheels are spinning an awful lot, and I'm not making as much progress as I would if I was more measured and less critical of myself. I'm afraid that if there was ego death, the wheels might not turn. I like that I'm a little bit attritional on myself, but I'm driven and I expect a lot of myself. I'm sorry that an awful lot of what happened 10 or 15 years ago happened. But at the same time, I wouldn't change it for me, as I keep saying. I'd change it because of the people around me and how difficult it was on them. It's made me a better person. I think it's made me a good pharmacist.
Yeah, I think, you know, troubles and strife and all that makes you a much more empathetic person in general. And certainly if it's happened to yourself or happened to people around you, you're much more understanding of people that come in your door as well. So you touched there on magic mushrooms. I'd love to discuss that with you, just in terms of what your thoughts are on microdosing, which is something that's bandied around nowadays as something that people are doing because it makes them feel a little bit better, can reduce the anxiety levels. They're microdosing, which basically means they're using very, very small amounts of psilocybin mushroom to just take the edge off, isn't it? It's almost like having a drink.
Yeah, well, like I suppose, okay, so we'll cover what a microdose is, I suppose. So a dose of psilocybin, if we were to take dried mushroom, like so there's about 200 or 300 species of mushroom that have psilocybin in them.
Yeah.
So if we were to take recreational mushrooms as we know them, we'd be taking in about 3 or 4 grams. So you're looking at between a fifth and a 20th of that dose, so about 0.3 of a gram for a microdose. An awful lot of people make tea out of it and stuff like that, and they'd have their microdose tea in the morning.
Yeah.
And then there's companies that do truffles and stuff like that are supposed to be microdose. And this will probably feed into a bigger conversation. I don't know if you want to have it, but the problem as I see it is that when we have a recreational drug that has potential applications in medicine, that is a scheduled drug, that is seen as an illegal and illicit drug, we oftentimes find it very difficult to decipher as a species whether or not that drug has a use in medicine.
Yeah.
I am extremely interested in psilocybin, ketamine, MDMA. Their uses in mental illness, depressive disorders, anxiety. What I'm excited about is what I don't love about them. It's symptomatic relief of an underlying issue.
Yes.
And I'm more interested in causative relief than I am in symptomatic relief.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, at the same time, very, very interested in something like psilocybin that makes your day more vibrant and tolerable. But I hate it because it has to be tolerable. Why does your life have to be tolerable? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
But is that the same as saying someone that takes an antidepressant is doing so to make their life tolerable?
they are, and that's why I'm very interested as a scientist in psilocybin. Because the reports, so for example, there was a brief read up that I did probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and I think it was from Harvard. So the people that, and I know anecdotally myself from talking to people, that people generally have a more vibrant experience on a microdose. So like fleeting interactions where there might be conflict, don't bother them. Excuse me. The colours are brighter and their day is just generally more enjoyable.
Sounds fucking brilliant. Does anyone know where I can get some?
It does, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when you read the reports, you go, oh, jeez, sounds a bit like the first pint.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We're out, we're having a good time.
And we have it, and the effects last for hours.
They do.
Yeah.
Because the half-life of the drug is quite long.
Yeah, very long.
So, like, what I'm interested in is that, and of recent, we know that SSRIs treating general anxiety disorder and depression, they don't work the way we believed you and I were told how they work.
Yeah.
They don't work like that.
I know.
You know,
In actual fact, they don't work as well as we thought they worked either, because they were the be all and the end all when I was in college.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing, you know, I know that there's a crowd in Trinity that are trying to make, you know, they're trying to actually do tailored support for depression, not just the one size fits all. So
yeah, and you see, like, and that then really feeds into ultimately like what we should be discussing. You know, we should be talking about tailored support. We should be investigating these compounds to see, are they something that could be used as a bridging therapy for an individual that needs tailored support?
Yeah.
So in medicine, we talk about bridging therapy if somebody is on warfarin, a blood thinner, and they go in for a knee-op. And there's bridging therapy where we take them off the warfarin and we give them injections instead because it's safer.
Yeah.
And it gets them from point A through B to C.
Yeah.
And I often think that, wouldn't it be nice, it's my like ramblings of a man in a car.
That's all right. Love it. Love it.
But wouldn't it be nice if psychiatry had at its disposal medications that could be used as bridging therapy and tailored, you know, but in tailored, you know, medicine for individuals suffering from mental health issues.
Yeah.
But that would require major infrastructural change as well as, you know, infrastructure just generally.
But it would also require, wouldn't it? It would require an awful lot of funding and probably not enough money to the pharma.
Oh yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So, you know, because like, is it patentable? You know, is psilocybin patentable? No. So they need to make a different molecule, you know, and they need to
see what happens when they make synthetic, you know, organic compounds.
Yeah.
It's not usually good.
No.
Because, so for everybody that's listening, when companies or labs, we'll call them labs, make synthetic, man-made versions of organic compounds that are found in plants or mushrooms or wherever they might be found, but they grow in nature. When humans get their meat hooks on them and try and replicate them and make their own version of them, they oftentimes have unprecedented and bad side effects. So, for example, synthetic THC or synthetic cannabis, that's man-made.
Yeah.
And it's a disaster, you know?
Yeah.
And that the initial intent there was good, not bad, but now it's been abused more than the plant itself, you know, like in terms of the fact that like...
Now you're talking about synthetic cannabis, you're not talking about specific genuses of cannabis plant that's
No, I'm
been,
talking about plastic cannabis, we'll call it, like cannabis that somebody, an organic chemist somewhere has tried to make their own drug compound that binds to the CB1 receptor in the brain to change it to elicit the response that we want from it without the high effect, we'll call it, without the effect that you find with THC, so that people can use it as a medicine.
Yeah.
So the intent was good, but what happened was we got these offshoots and we got these, you know, rogue people that went away and used their book smarts to make dangerous compounds. And that's what happens. Like, you know, humans are disastrous that way. Like,
yeah.
But ultimately, what I think is that we need a tailored health system, not just in mental health, but, you know, when it comes to using drugs like psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine.
Even cannabis, you know, like, what are your thoughts on cannabis? Do you think it should be legalised?
I think prohibition generally, just as a whole, doesn't work. I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid.
Yeah.
You know? And I might just give a small disclaimer, these are my views.
Yeah.
They're not part of anything.
Not every pharmacist.
Not everybody believes this. I just think that prohibition, if it worked, it would have worked. You know? It, like, one of the things I love to do is I love to have transition year students into the pharmacy. And if there's any of them that have any inclination of doing pharmacy, you know, I ask them loads of questions. I ask them what are they interested in, why they think they might do pharmacy, and the usual stuff. But one of the things I always ask them is about their opinion on legalization. You're talking to 15 or 16-year-olds and they tend to have these profound thoughts that an old croc like me doesn't have, you know. And I'm always really interested. But one chap I was talking to recently went the opposite way, and he had an opinion that was more, I suppose, traditional.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he couldn't. So we ended up talking about where prohibition, specifically with cannabis, came from. and how it came to be and how it became a regulated substance and how it kind of washed, like, I suppose it washed west or east of America over into Europe. And it started with no-knock warrants and the war on drugs, and, you know, it was more about getting in and dismantling the infrastructure of anti-establishment organizations than it was about the drug itself. Mm-hmm. It was tolerated in America up to a point. The reason it began, you know, causing problems in the States was because it was easier, faster, and had much higher yield than paper. When they decided when they realized that they could make hemp paper out of it.
Yeah.
So the paper mills, those guys were already millionaires in the States at that stage, and this is 100 years ago or more. So they said, here, that cannabis stuff has to go.
Yeah.
And they blamed it on non-nationals, we'll call them.
Mexicans, isn't it?
And that's where the word
marijuana came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if we go back, like, its origin, it's the same plant infrastructure. It's the same phylum of plant as the hop.
Yeah.
Like, we all know I love beer. You know, I just find it absolutely obscure.
But what are your thoughts on, so, like, there will be people out there that go, oh, it shouldn't be legalised because my son went down the route of cannabis abuse from the age of 16, and he went... you know, he had psychiatric issues as a result, and the psychosis came. And where do we draw the line? Because you know yourself, like, I mean, alcohol is illegal unless you're 18, but we all know youngsters that do it because, you know, and they've done it and we've done it ourselves.
Yeah, but would more youngsters be using alcohol if it wasn't 18s or 21s? Arguably they would be, like, you know, if there wasn't a cultural law or just a law general preventing the sale of alcohol to minors, would they be consuming it? Would more of them be consuming it? You know? Like, my opinion on it is that it should be, cannabis specifically should be legal. Mm-hmm. It should be available. And it should be available recreationally. So, like, you know, what you do with it after that then is regulatory and legislatively up to the government.
Yeah.
But I believe that the inside of the brain, there's, for everybody listening, if you don't like guts and glamour, don't tune out now for a second. The inside of the brain, there's a part of the brain called the substantia nigra. It's like a black butterfly. It's full of dopamine, right? And that's the chemical, the neurotransmitter that's released when you ingest THC or you smoke a joint. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, and this has been linked back to instances of psychosis in young people, the problem is that the substantia nigra isn't fully developed till you're about 25. And when you're flooding your brain with THC, you effectively stunt its growth, and it lends itself then to mental health issues. So you limit the access to 25 and over, you tax it, you regulate it, and you also stand over the quality and the concentration of the THC that's available. Mm-hmm. And it's as simple as that. Like, telling us that, like, 7% of the population smoke cannabis regularly. And that's a little bit like me saying that I was 16 stone, you know?
Yeah.
They're the ones that tell us.
Yeah,
I would say it's more like 20%.
Yeah, no, I would suggest the same, if not more, you know.
Yeah.
There's loads of it in the country. It's readily available.
It is.
Yeah, and, you know, it's, like, I mean, alcohol is regulated. Yeah.
It is. And one of the really interesting things is, do you ever see that graph that it shows death and harm caused by drug over time?
Yeah.
So alcohol, of course, is the front runner.
Huge, yeah.
And then it's heroin. So alcohol is kind of 50-50. So it causes, 50% of alcoholics will die as a result of alcohol, but 50% of the bar thereafter then is harm to those around the individual that is consuming the alcohol. And then it's heroin, and it goes right the way down the line. And you can watch this, it's a small snippet of a clip. You can Google it. But cannabis doesn't feature on that graph over a 50-year period with respect to death and harm unless you bring criminality into it. And that then for me brings forward this huge question. What happens criminality when we legalise cannabis? And if you and I hypothesise that 20%, give or take, of the Irish population are consuming cannabis that is sourced illegally, how much of the funds for the criminal activity on the island of Ireland and in Europe do we remove from those criminal organisations if we legalised, regulated and legislated for that specific drug on its own?
Yeah.
And I just go down quagmires about this stuff all the time, but I just think it's boring and it's old. And then the other thing is that, like, we were talking about, you were talking about a previous guest, and he was the governor of Mountjoy.
Yeah.
Like, it's always the people who are most societally disadvantaged that are harmed the most by punitive measures associated with drug use.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And I just
But you
find
look at the
that
States.
such a yeah, but sure, it's privatised jails over there. Like, they're private, like, it's a money making racket as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Stack them in and pile them high. Like,
Oh, it's terrible.
You know,
it's terrible.
complete, like, overcrowding is. But, like, so we're letting those individuals down in the acute sense.
Yeah.
But because we have branded a specific drug or group of drugs as illicit, harmful drugs, we can't study them. So it means that even fewer scientists get to study them. I know one scientist that's allowed to study those drugs, and he's not really allowed to study them. He studies them in terms of their purity on behalf of the government.
Yeah.
There's nobody allowed work with these compounds to see, are they a good medicine? Which in turn brings us full circle. It harms the here and now, in that the people who are already marginalised, who are having a tough time in our communities, are being punished for possession of small quantities of illegal drugs. And then in the long term, because they're illegal drugs, you can't study them, you can't work with them, you can't possibly
Prescribe them as medicines.
You can't prescribe them as medicine. You can't even lean on the potential of them being a medicine in the future.
Yeah.
So then the future generations aren't going to get the benefit from drugs that, in fairness, we know psilocybin is safe at enormous doses.
Yeah.
We know cannabis and THC is a safe drug in terms of its toxicity now, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get into the weeds about, you know, toxicity and potency and everything. We'll bore the ears off everybody.
Yeah,
but
no.
like, we know that these compounds are safe, and we know that other compounds that are readily available in Irish pharmacy and in medicine in general are not, by comparison.
Yeah.
So we need to do something about this. It's not working. Like,
No, I know.
you know?
Yeah. Do you see it happening in our lifetime?
Well, I tell you, I interviewed Eamon Ryan about 5 years ago about this.
Okay.
And it was around the time that he gave a great soundbite saying that he wanted a coffee shop in every corner of the town.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got on to him. I was working for a publication at the time, and I said, any chance of an interview? And in fairness to him, he said, yeah. And he was adamant. He was full sure. But instead of talking to me, he should have been banking on the young electorate that had their votes in their hands at the time, and he should have been campaigning to them, and he wasn't.
Okay.
So
It's
he
risque,
missed
though,
his boat.
for a politician to do that too.
It is, but I think he was probably at the time the most credible politician that we could have actually relied on to get the job done, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's an awful lot of benefits to it. Like, I like to think romantically about seaweed cultivation in Ireland as well. And one of the things that
Did you say seaweed cultivation?
Seaweed cultivation, yeah, because of its net draw of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. I worry about stuff, but
You're in good company.
yeah. But cannabis like that.
Yeah.
You know, cannabis will grow readily. There's hundreds of acres of cannabis in Ireland. I've walked through them. Now, not drug producing cannabis, they produce CBD and not THC. It's highly regulated, specifically licensed. I've done a little bit of work for these companies, and it flourishes, and there's great potential for agriculture there, you know. But as I said, they missed the boat. They didn't propagate the notion, the idea, and the potential benefits, even just agriculturally.
Yeah.
You know, we missed it.
What are your thoughts on CBD? Because the jury's out in terms of, you know, is it snake oil that these guys are peddling? Does it really work?
There's a few things about CBD. So, from a cultural point of view, there's two broad groups of people that want to work with cannabis. There's scientists and there's people in the public who have a great interest in it. And they both want the same thing. Generally speaking, they both want it to work as a medicine. They both want CBD and THC, the two primary compounds available in cannabis, to be used as medicines. The problem is that scientists have to go through a stepwise manner. It's ABC, 1, 2, 3, da, da, da. But everybody out in the community is saying, it works, it works, it works. Listen to us, it works. Mm-hmm. And they all meet in the middle. And there's somebody over here saying, well, my son had Tourette's and we gave him this tincture that had CBD in it and suddenly his tics were noticeably better.
Yeah. And
the scientists are saying, well, that's all very well and good, but we have to do a study on that before we can decide that happened. And it means that the left and the right, or the A and the B, meet in the middle and you get the foreground and it's just murky, muddy water and you don't know what way's up and what way's down. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, CBD has a great application as an anti-inflammatory. It has applications in controlling seizures, things like Tourette's.
Pain relief as well is one of the things that people do take it for. And some people get on very well with it. So is that...
They do.
And then others, it's just like nothing, you know.
It is, but that, you see, this is the problem. Because we can't tell, we're not able to see the wood for the trees because there's too many people in the room talking. You know, we're in a really small room, there's people with loads of opinions, we all want the best. But nobody will just slow down for a minute. Like CBD is an enormous volume of distribution. So it means that it doesn't like being in your blood. It loves being in fatty tissue. And it, like, for it to carry out its action, we need to take big high doses of it that aren't available really in a cost effective way over the counter in pharmacies in Ireland. Mm-hmm. Might get 100 milligram bottle for €70. Is that really going to help you? The likelihood is that at that dose that's available to you, maybe not. But then,
and why is the dose so small?
Because it's not cost effective to produce large doses.
Yeah.
Which then brings us back to the question of synthetic compounds and man-made compounds.
Yeah.
Which I just don't like, you know. So...
is it also to do with the fact that you can't patent CBD?
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
So you can't actually make your money... You know, you can't make money off something that you can't patent.
They really drive the mechanism of how they pull the drug or the foodstuffs out of the plant.
I love
the correction
of your...
can't call it a drug.
No.
It's a foodstuffs in Ireland. So it's governed by the Food Safety Authority.
Yes.
Not the HPRA, which is the Health Product Regulatory Authority, who's our FDA, really. Mm-hmm. So, like, they like to be more concentrated, these companies, on how they extract it out. Mm-hmm. And there's really interesting work happening with that. Like, so there's a company not too far from here that's working with Trinity College, or were at the time that I was involved with them, in a study where they do a cold press. So they cold press.
I know who you're talking about, Mark.
They pull the compound out in its natural oils, and it comes out with all of its sister compounds, all of the different chemicals that are in it. And they happen to, they think, according to their... so far in the study in Trinity that was going before the pandemic, to know if it's still going, they think that these compounds have what they call an entourage effect.
Yes. And that's the thing about natural products.
There you go.
You know, and that's why when you tinker around with things, they can go horribly wrong. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So it's interesting, but we just need... there's an awful lot of things that have to go right, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
For CBD, legalization, cannabis as a whole, THC, medicine, to benefit from that particular plant.
Yeah.
An awful lot of things have to go right.
No, there is. And, you know, an awful lot of years of research as well before anything will be done about it, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well,
which is unfortunate for such an old an old drug, for a drug that's been around since the beginning of time as we know it.
Yeah.
And we still know so little about it.
27,000 years we've been using it as a species.
Yeah.
And we have been cherishing it and making things from it and burying our dead with it. It's incredible. Like we're finding people preserved with cannabis in their hand, you know. It's amazing.
Isn't it mad? Yeah.
You know. So I just, you know, sometimes I get a bit romantic about it and I get sad about it because I like to think that it's just a big misunderstanding that's happened in the last 100 years and we'll figure it out. But I think we have another 50 really before everybody cottons on eventually. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't think what's happened in the States or Canada is 100% correct. Like, you know, like there's an awful lot of criminality that has come out of the full legalization that's happened in California.
Yeah. And so it's hard to get it right, isn't it?
It's hard to get it right. That's the point. Yeah. So, like, look, what'll happen is whatever will happen. But that's what I believe.
Yeah. Let's get back to pharmacy.
Yeah, go for it.
So, what are your thoughts on pharmacy in general? If you had a child now, would you be steering them in the direction of the career that you took? What do you say to those little baby pharmacists that are coming out and they're a little bit disillusioned with the job, with everything? And what are your thoughts on the future of pharmacy? So there's a lot in there. We could be talking for another hour. So ultimately my belief about pharmacy is that we're in big trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. We are, for the last long time, definitely decades, probably longer. I'm not in it long enough to be able to say longer. Like, I'm qualified 6 years. I'm out into my 7th year. So I think pharmacy is reactionary, particularly from a regulatory point of view. Something happens and then legislation is written as a result of that something, whatever that something might be. And it means that we end up in a situation where we don't have... Oh, thanks very much. Look at that, equipped with water and everything. I'm just pouring Mark
I'm not
some
going to
water.
ignore it. I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to draw attention to it. No, I'm only joking. Thanks.
You're welcome.
We're in a situation where we're continually reacting to whatever is happening around us. A great example of that now, right, would be like at the start of the pandemic, about 6 months before the pandemic, there was an awful lot of drum banging about why don't we have e-prescribing in Ireland. So for everybody out there, your paper prescription, pharmacists were fed up with looking at them.
And we couldn't feckin' read them either because doctors' handwritings are more appalling than our own.
Yes, absolutely. And just from an administrative point of view and a waste point of view, so there's no need for it. Plus, why were we concentrating resources on preventing forgeries when we could just have a direct communicative service between the doctor and the pharmacist that you couldn't have any forgeries on?
Yes.
Which I was like, why am I getting this notification written in red saying, watch out for the forgery? You're saying, well, if we de-prescribing, we wouldn't have this problem.
And like, just for the general public here that may still be listening to us, an open
rabbit hole.
They're probably tapping out now at this stage. But we were getting letters from, was it the HSE?
Yeah.
To let us know that, say, a prescription pad had been stolen or that there was forgeries going around with a particular doctor's name on it. Like, it was very archaic.
It was. It was old-fashioned. We didn't need it.
So old-fashioned.
And it was a waste of resources.
And as if you'd be sticking that doctor's name up along with all the other 10 doctors that, like, it's like, where does it stop?
100%.
So
You'd nearly have a calendar of them.
Yeah.
You'd have 2 a month.
Yes.
So e-prescribing couldn't be done from a regulatory point of view. Absolutely not. Are you joking me? E-prescribing? No. Oh, geez, could be a couple of years now. Could be 5 years before we... Do you know what we'll do? We'll set up a standing committee to figure out when we'll set up the committee that might think about doing that. And when we set up the standing committee, do you know what we need to do? We need to have a vote first. And this will go on and on and on till eventually...
This is actually what happens, guys.
It genuinely is. So till eventually, the emergency happened. And when the emergency arrived, it meant that nobody could attend their GP and they weren't encouraged to attend their pharmacy unless absolutely necessary, which led to e-prescribing. Now,
which literally happened overnight. I kid you not. We went in one day
and suddenly
all the prescriptions were coming in by email, to the point that actually I couldn't cope. I kept forgetting. So I wouldn't even look at the emails and people would be coming in, and actually this is the bane of our lives too. So Dr. what's his name sent over the script. He said it'd be ready. What? Ready?
Yeah.
Are you joking me?
It brought with it its own problems.
Yeah, but
it's not technically e-prescribing.
No, but it's good. But it is good, and it was definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah. But it happened. It literally happened overnight after years of pharmacists griping about the fact that it should have happened.
Yeah, and it was born out of necessity. So it needed to be legislated for. It needs to be regulated. And of course, this was reactionary. It wasn't by design. It wasn't figured out. Now, this system is called health mail, right? And it's basically just a closed email system. It's an encrypted email system. You have to be registered with the HSE. You have a license, essentially, to have it. But, and it existed in a particular type of form shortly before the emergency, but it was never used. And suddenly, as Laura said, overnight it was being used. And it was functioning quite well. Like, this is just the blatant example. Like, we can get right down into the weeds of other things that have happened in the last decade that don't really matter to the public, but that have a huge impact on pharmacy and the way pharmacies are run, and the burden of bureaucracy that is on the pharmacist specifically, as a result of those reactionary measures. And I just think we can do better. And the problem is that we're now in a situation, despite people like myself warning everybody, as early as 5 years ago, I was telling people in the know about encounters that I had with students where they said, we're not going to be pharmacists. In their final year, they were like, no, I'm going to go and find something else to do.
Yeah, I can take my amazing degree, because it really is. It's an exceptionally good degree. Yeah. And I can scientific degree. Actually, master's now.
Yeah.
And I can just go off and do anything with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they knew that 5 years ago. And I was going into, offices in Dublin warning people, saying, that the students down in Cork that I was doing a careers talk with are, well, there's 50 of them in the room and 4 of them are going to community. Really? Yeah, we should do something about that. Maybe we should talk to you someday about it. That's all that would happen, And now we're in a situation where there's a critical skills shortage in pharmacy as a whole, not just with pharmacists, because that bureaucratic burden, that stress burden, is not only been recognised by our young pharmacists who have just evaporated, who might do a locum for mad money and their right to. They don't want full-time work. They don't want the burden of stress. And that then in turn is trickling down, and it's affecting the true Trojans of the professions, the technicians. It's mainly ladies, and they're like, I just can't actually believe some of the places that I walked into as a locum pharmacist in the last couple of months, the amount of work being carried out by these full-time staff members because they had no pharmacists.
And this isn't in any way to be patronising towards those ladies, but they are absolutely, they're the nurses of the hospital. They run the pharmacy.
I was going to places pleading with some of these people to just give me, leave work for me. I'll be back next week. I'm doing 2 days for you next week. Leave work for me, because the pharmacists can't cope. They're leaving. They're finding something else to do. We've no replacements. We've no troops coming in from the rear because the young pharmacists don't want to do it. So now we have a critical skills shortage with the pharmacists. Now the burden of responsibility, the stress burden is on those individuals who do so much work already. And now what? Now we're going to have no technicians. Community pharmacy is going to crumble just as a whole. And I spend so much time worrying about it. Like, I spend so much time about decisions being made, so much time worrying about decisions being made and thinking about the potential impact. Like, it's a game of chess. How many chess moves, how few chess moves will it take before this entire regime collapses? And I think we're well on the way to the shortest amount of moves. Like,
it is worrying. I worry about the profession in terms of, so, you know, I've seen what's gone on as well. I'm a lot out of it a lot longer than you are. You know, I'm doing it a lot longer than you, and it's that burden, that administrative burden, the bureaucracy that surrounds it as well. And it seems like there's just more and more being piled on. I found the 2 years of the pandemic very tough.
Yeah,
just being a pharmacist, and you know, people were, for want of a better word, not happy. You know, the public wasn't happy. It was a tricky time to navigate. And yeah, I do worry where it's going, because ultimately, you know, can our jobs be done by robots in the dispensing capacity?
They can.
And
it's been done.
Could prescriptions be, you know, I know they're being flown around by drones, they're being delivered by drones. And is it an Amazon type setup then, where there's a pharmacist in a remote, you know, sitting at a computer, looking at robots, picking the medicines off the shelf, slapping the label on, and we're just the final check that medicine was correct.
That production line process is happening in the UK, and there's individuals working 14 hours a day, and they're doing 800 items each.
Yeah.
So an item, we don't count prescriptions obviously because it's not accurate enough.
No.
If there's 10 drugs on a prescription, that's 10 items. There's 3 drugs on a prescription, it's 3 items, just because it's more accurate. So like a good busy pharmacy would do 300 items. And we're seeing in the UK, some of these facilities where one pharmacist is doing 600 items on their own, checking them. And just from, you know, a fallibility point of view, that's not sustainable, it's not safe, it's not correct. Can and does the technology exist? Can technology replace the role of a pharmacist? Absolutely. Does it exist? Yes. What is the role for the pharmacist in the future as a result of that? The result for a pharmacist in Ireland, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know.
And is money driving this as well? Like, let's get as many prescriptions out, as many items done, as many prescriptions done as quickly as possible. Yeah. It's like the Tesco tills going and them being replaced by the self-service checkout.
100%, yeah. Because like, why would they pay somebody to do what the customer will do readily? The customer's picked up the items. Why won't they carry the items and they carry them out of the shop? Why are they doing that 6 foot movement?
Yeah.
It's a backlog. It's inefficient. And pharmacy has been viewed the same by large multinational corporations. And you see, like, we won't talk about Ireland, but you see large multinationals buying up chains and individual pharmacies, and they're streamlining them. And that's pretty much what's happening. You know, like they're removing and will continue to remove and maybe technify pharmacy to a point where I don't think will become obsolete. I think to be a role for the pharmacist, I just don't know what that is. And I don't think that we're in a phase in pharmacy where, like, this reactionary phase that I'm talking about, we need to get out of that, like,
and be more visionary and more like let's act, let's see the train coming and
100%.
go for it there. But like, what do we need to do to change that then? How does that change, do you think?
We need to expand.
You know, you're on the PSI Council, aren't you?
Yeah.
The PSI Council is the Pharmaceutical Society of Ireland Council. So it's what do you do in there? What are you supposed to do? What as a council member, what is your role?
My role on council, so when you get there's a national vote every couple of years, all the pharmacists vote. You get appointed to council if you're successful in the vote. When you're appointed to council, then you're then assigned to a committee. And the committees then vary from, you know, like the committee I'm on is Performance and Resource Committee. So it's basically procurement and finances. So like if the roof needs thatching, we find somebody to thatch the roof. And you know, it has to be according to the PAS system. Like, it has to be according to the public appointment system. So it's all very black and white and 1, 2, 3. I got involved in the PSI because, like we were talking about, I was one of the pharmacists who came out and I thought, I can't do this. I'm not doing this forever. No way. And that happened in the first couple of weeks, like.
Yeah.
So I decided I'd throw myself at it, and within 8 months I was on the PSI. So I got into it to change it, to try and incite positive regulatory legislative change. What arrives at council table tends, from a regulatory and legislative point of view, tends not to be anything that I could really have any major influence on. I can argue for or against points that I think are important, and there'll be people that would agree and disagree with me. There's 21 people on the council, and not all of them are pharmacists. But generally speaking, if I feel very strongly about something, it tends not to be the case that it would be often, you know, be a belief that would be, like, I suppose, communicated by the majority.
Okay.
I'm, I suppose, very concerned about the future of pharmacy, and what we deal with in PSI is the now of pharmacy. And when I say, you know, I might be worried about a particular problem with a piece of legislation, or I might be worried about a survey they're conducting and the results of the survey, or the potential for the results of the survey, how they might be interpreted by what we call the registrant, which is the pharmacists in Ireland. That isn't something that really genuinely changes anything on the ground. It's really, I'm glad I got into it because I had an aspiration to get into politics, and since I realised what politics is, it is politics. At its core, it's legislation and politics, and it's useful, and I do think that we do good things in there, but ultimately it's not where I think the union is. Like, the union has potential to really change pharmacy, and I'm involved in that as well. But where does pharmacy need to be? What do we need to be looking out for? We need to change the burden of responsibility on the pharmacists. It's making the job too unattractive. After that, then, for the new graduates, they're not going to wait in it. After that, then, we need to change the role of the pharmacist, broaden the horizon of the pharmacist. That then, in turn, will alleviate the stress on the GPs, which means minor ailments can be treated in the community pharmacy, which we don't have the power to do. So you come in with an eye infection. What age is your youngest now? He's
9.
9. Okay, so he's a bit old to be getting eye infections, but he lands in and he's a sticky eye. It's Friday, it's bank holiday, doctors at chocker, it's lashing rain outside, it's dark, and your only hope is to go to the out of hours doctor, and then what? Find a pharmacy on the other side of the city that might be open. You know, when really I know that you need a tube of chloromycetin out of my fridge, it's going to cost you £3, and we'll have you in and out, and sticky oil will be all but gone by Monday.
Yeah. But
Why
it's not
is
done.
that happening? That can't happen because it's prescription only. That's silly, you know?
And it's not prescription only in the UK. And
No.
there's the minor ailments over there.
Yeah, and neither is fluconazole.
No, which is
No.
diflucan, by the way, ladies, for the thrush.
Yeah.
Which is very simply treated, and pharmacists' hands are tied. So we see people coming in all the time with minor ailments
Yeah.
that could easily be treated and not have to go to the GP. But unfortunately, due to regulations here, they do.
Yes.
And is that going to change anytime soon? You know, the emergency contraception came off prescription. We can give that out.
Yeah.
I know now in the UK, even vaginal HRT is going to be OTC'd as well.
Do you know really what it is? It'll be a marrying of opinions from both the public and the public's needs and wants that need to be met. Their public representatives, so the Minister for Health, and pharmacists and pharmacy staff shouting about those same things, and then they'll meet in the middle, and then regulatory machines will work. That's what's going to happen.
But I'm surprised
how long
it hasn't.
that takes, I don't know.
Why is it taking so long here compared to the UK? Like, does the PSI have anything to do with that? Could they be pushing for it?
No, like, in fairness now to the PSI, like, I actually have to say, you know, all these beliefs are my own. So, like, I'm not in a representative function now, like,
No, that's
for
fine.
PSI. These are just my beliefs, and be them right, wrong, or indifferent. But like, in fairness to the PSI, our system in Ireland is a little bit kind of slow. Like, we'd have to have the Health Product Regulatory Authority.
So that's an understatement of the year now.
Yeah.
They're saying that, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Like, it's sluggish.
Yeah.
And the communication between these departments, the Department of Health, the HSE, the PSI, whatever the union want to say about it, the HPRA. So the licensing for the drug has to change, and the rules and regulations around the drug has to change. That means that this corporate office over here has to talk to that corporate office over there, and that just doesn't happen, like, as fast as we need it to happen. And I don't know why. Then sometimes mad things happen, like, you open the budget and you learn that contraception is going to be free for 16 to 25 year olds, and you go, jeez, that's great.
Yeah,
absolutely, that should happen. And then I sit in on whatever meeting I'm sitting in on, and for whoever I'm with, and I learn that nobody in a regulatory function or a union function decided this, that just came from the top.
Yeah.
Whoever decided, I don't even know where that came from.
And actually, just for everyone to know, that happened, and pharmacists didn't even know about it. Like, I mean, and we were the end point of contact, so people would have been coming in with their scripts going, where's my free stuff? And we just didn't know even what to do. The portal wasn't working.
100%.
We've a number of portals, guys. We don't even have one system. So we have a portal for vaccines, we have a portal for emergency contraception, there'll be probably another
products.
Portal for high techs, there'll be another portal no doubt for the hyperemesis gravidarum, for the caravan. So, and my WhatsApps were hopping, because I'm like you on a number of working groups, and it was we were the last people to know. It would have seemed, but GPs were none the wiser either, because I've loads of GP friends. They said we had no clue about this, and suddenly they're doing, and it's great and it's right that women are getting this service.
100%. But this is just to, I suppose, give a good example of how kind of maybe backwards the system is. Like, you hear about something like this coming down the line, there might be murmurs of something, but there was nothing about that. Like the vaccines arriving.
Yeah.
Or we're going to start giving out that. He's on the news, 6-1. Well, how are you getting on, Minister for Health? What are we going to do next now about this disaster? Oh, vaccines tomorrow, lads. What? Where? Oh, in pharmacies. How did you do that? I thought the fridges were a problem. Oh no, sorts that out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's grand. Actually, we changed
the labels.
We changed the drug. Actually, is grand for normal
Irish
fridges.
solution. What about the fridges? You spent 80 million on fridges. No, don't worry about that. Spent $1 million on labels. Grand. Don't worry about that.
It was gas, wasn't it? Because even I was going, because people were, I was going, unreal, wasn't it?
Oh man, it was a disaster.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was great.
Yeah.
But, oh man, could have been different.
And everyone wanted to get themselves vaccinated, and that's understandable. But Christ Almighty, the poor girls out the front answering those phones.
Yeah. If you weren't saying, no, sorry, I have no hand sanitizer.
You were saying, no, sorry, I have no vaccines.
No vaccines. Like that old Father Ted. I think when he picks up and says, hello? No, we are not here. There's no vaccines here.
So true. Yeah. Oh my God. It does feel a little bit like Father Ted or Faulty Towers sometimes.
Yeah, but that's
but
ultimately,
do you enjoy your job as a pharmacist?
I do for the most part
60% of the time.
I do for the most part now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got really disillusioned with it. February I cracked.
Okay.
Just couldn't do it anymore. Didn't want to be a pharmacist. Hated it. Couldn't.
And what did you do about that?
Went out locuming.
Okay.
Yeah, wide open road, loved it.
Did you?
Loved it. Man, like...
And the people you meet are gas crack as well, because even now I'm going in doing a few events and stuff, and, tipping away in the back of some of them, and the crack that you can have.
Oh, I love it. Loved locuming. Like, Dad, when I was growing up, Dad was an on-call vet, like. So going with Dad in the car, and he had a 1993 Vento, it was red, and we used to tip away in the dark in that car, and I loved it. And Dad was the man,
Yeah.
We went to places, and there wouldn't be there wouldn't be a question that Dad didn't know the answer to.
Okay.
Geez, he was the man. And like locoming, I felt like that.
Okay.
Like I was so confident in my abilities, having done what I had done in the time that I had managed to do it, that I knew there wasn't a dispensary I couldn't walk into and do well in it. And it was a great confidence builder, and it was a great learning curve. Learned loads, met great people, dealt with some mad problems, and loved it. Loved the open road. Loved the 6 o'clock start and the 9 o'clock finish. Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. 7 days a week. Tell me where I'm there. You know?
And are you still at that?
No.
What are you up to now?
I'm a supervising pharmacist again, having said I'd never do it again.
I'm only messing.
But I'll tell you what.
Why did you go back to it?
Because I scored a unicorn job.
Okay.
Job that just doesn't exist.
Okay.
9:30
What are you
start.
doing?
5 minutes from my front door.
You see, that makes a
in
massive
leafy
difference.
suburb. Beautiful little
And I did that
village.
for years because I had small kids. And actually, what pharmacy gave to me as well as a female, which I think, you know, like, I mean, you can't pretend that this doesn't happen and that women don't want this. It gave me a job that was close to home.
Yeah.
And it gave me a 4-day week, and it gave me the time to be able to raise my babies.
Yeah,
it did.
You could be a mom too, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and there was a time when my husband would have come down and I would have, you know, breastfed the babies in the care room. You know, because I had to go back to work when one of my babies was 6 months. So there is an awful lot of positives about it too, and I love the patients, and I love the people, and I love the girls that I worked with, genuinely like friends for life, you know, that kind of way. So it did, and that's very important for females to know that they can do that. They can have a career, and they can also have the family if they want.
But this is where the role changing, it needs to evolve more, you know.
It does, because you can only do it for so long before you get either really disillusioned, really bored, or really pissed off.
Yeah, yeah.
And burnt out is very much.
Yeah, but those 3 first, I've been polite about it. Like,
yeah, okay.
You know, like, realistically,
I
was so pissed off.
Yeah.
So pissed off.
Yeah.
Wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how Ola put up with me.
And you come home and you're in file form, and you're almost like,
wicked.
don't talk to me. And you know the way someone wants to tell you about a little problem they have, and you've been dealing with people's problems all day, and you're just back off now.
Oh yeah,
I don't care about that.
Or talk to me.
Your
on the
toes
weekend.
gangrene, but I don't care.
Yeah, you joke me. I paid to talk to people. I'm talking to you. No way. Like, disaster.
Yeah.
But like, and you know, that's a really good point that you touched on there. It's not, you know, and I want male pharmacists and men in all professions as well to be comfortable about talking about that. Like, the reason that I was comfortable taking this job, having said I'd never go back to supervising pharmacy because of the bureaucracy and the stress and everything. 9:30 start, hour lunch. Pharmacists don't get lunches.
No.
That is criminal. Like, that is so silly, you know.
So pharmacists don't get lunch breaks as such. Like, I mean, we get a lunch break in inverted commas, as in we can grab a sandwich and shove it down our necks, and usually within 10 minutes.
Twisted guts, yeah.
Well, that's it. And like, I mean, even to the point that I'm so used to eating so fast now that my kids will stop, you know, the moment you've hoovered that up.
Slow
like, you go out for dinner with me and I've eaten my main course before you've even taken your first sip of wine.
Yeah.
I'm that quick.
Yeah,
and that's what you get used to working, because there isn't the you know, you need a pharmacist on the premises for the entire time the pharmacy's open, and you know, you can't afford to have 2 pharmacists on the premises. That's the reality, and no one's going to come in and work for an hour for you to let you off for lunch. So unless there's a double shift, as in someone working 9 to 6 and someone else
then
working,
you have to open your shop longer. You have to do 9 to 10.
and it isn't commercially viable for a lot of pharmacies. It just isn't. Even
like
the bigger chains.
Rural Ireland, that's just not going to happen.
No.
You know, a place dies at 10 to 6.
So we've got used to this as well. And then there's also the case where a lot of pharmacists wouldn't want their pay to be docked an hour a day.
No, but
to go for the lunch break.
We have to normalise. We have to recognise realistically what it takes to have that skill on your premises. I think that people look at pharmacist salaries as unsavoury and unhygienic to talk about. Like, but at the end of the day, like, we all know what a doctor's worth, and it's not to devalue a doctor, but pharmacists are worth the same and more. And it's just the short and the long of it. The amount, I'm not going to bore anybody in the amount of nonsense and stuff in our heads, but it's there, and it took 5 or 6 or 7 years to acquire that information. Highly skilled individuals, experts on drugs and medicine. Like, why is that not valuable? Mm-hmm. Do we need a lunch break? Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
And a proper lunch break, like time to actually check out, where you're not on a lunch break, but you're also listening
100%.
out for the
100%.
sales that are going, the codeine sales.
Shoving this.
I know.
And that,
I know.
So we
Actually,
get an hour off in the middle of the day, Monday to Friday.
Thoughts on codeine. Should it be on prescription? Like, I mean, we all saw the prime time.
It should.
Yeah.
It should. Yeah. The Suboxone clinic. Now, and I'll say that with the caveat that it needs to be prescription only, but we need major investment in our health infrastructure.
Well, that goes without saying.
Treatment centres, mental health.
Proper pain centres too, where people can actually access care. But like, I mean, that in and of itself is something that's very basic, and it's just not there.
Foreign to this health system, though. A pain clinic, you know, where would you find one of them? Like, they're just, you know. But then, if you go to Florida, there's a pain clinic beside the McDonald's, and we can't have that either. So, like, we you know, but like, it, I get really kind of sad about that. The number of people that I helped on my last job with opiate replacement therapy, giving them methadone and Suboxone to get them off codeine. I carry a note with me in my wallet from a girl that nearly committed suicide the day that I gave out to her for the amount of codeine that she was taking. And she later told me that if I hadn't given out to her that day, that the next couple of stops on her journey would have been for boxes in Europe, and she was going to take the whole lot of them. And that just killed me, like.
Yeah.
You know, and I just don't see it as, it's so avoidable, like.
And it's such a problem, like we all have, and we've all seen the regular people that come in looking for it, and they do have an issue with it. And I think that what the program a couple of weeks ago didn't, you know, recognise or didn't talk about was the difficulty that a pharmacist has and that the pharmacy staff have in intervening there and then with the patient. Because yes, we have care rooms, and they talked about the care rooms, but no one is going to. No one's going to agree to come into a care room 100%. When they come in for a pain. You know, you can't go in and have a heart to heart with someone about pain relief, because if they come in and they want what they want, and you say to them, "Well, can we go into the care room?" they'll be highly insulted, and a lot of people don't recognise that they have an issue, because what happens is with, you know, codeine use, people will be taking it, you know, and if they take it regularly for long enough, and it doesn't need to be long enough, just a few days, what happens is when they stop taking it, they get what's called rebound headache. So then they're like, oh, I have a headache, I need to take the drug that to get rid of this headache, and paracetamol won't do it, nor will ibuprofen, because in actual fact, they are now actually in codeine withdrawal. Yeah. So it's only the codeine will fix it. So they need the codeine. And then opioids, by their very nature, have an additive effect. So they need more and more and more to get the actual hit that they need. And when I mean hit, I mean they just need to get the pain relief down. They need to get rid of that headache. It's not like they're getting high at all. Yeah. So it's that, and it's the stomach pains that they have with it, or the diarrhea that they might have with withdrawals as well. Like, let's not forget, codeine is in the same category of drugs as heroin. Yeah. So it's just as hard. And like that, I have dealt with ladies who were on the methadone program for, codeine dependency.
Like we're all familiar with, like, you know, those docu-series on Netflix and stuff, like, about people been in a car tip and hurting their neck in the States and ending up on oxycodone, and then they get cut off, as they say, and then they end up, you know, abusing opiates that are bought on the street, like heroin. They end up graduating until they're on intravenous heroin, and, you know, their whole life falls apart. The same is true for codeine in Ireland. And where I worked in the Northwest in Mayo, what was happening was because an awful lot of these people hadn't the opportunity or the ability to get to the next town over, because you're talking 20 miles, like. And if they could, they'd quickly get cut off over there as well, the amount of codeine they were buying. They wouldn't be able to get it locally, but for the odd time. They'd end up buying other opiates. I was talking to 17 and 18-year-olds that I was trying to attract in onto my program to stop them from ruining themselves. that were grinding OxyContin up and snorting it. And
In Ireland?
In Ireland.
And
And it
where were they
started
getting-
with codeine.
Where are they getting the OxyContin from? Because
Buying it on the street and they're paying mad money
and
for a pill.
who is providing these? Because where are they getting the OxyContin from? Because I would have thought that, I know like everyone talked about dope sick and the fact that God, the pharma company over there was terrible for, you know, ramming it down doctors' throats and the doctors then giving it and people becoming, you know, dependent on it. But I thought that we do have a very robust system for controlled drugs here.
We do. Yeah.
And,
I suppose
you
it
know,
doesn't mean that it's not getting through.
Yeah.
I was amazed at it. But like, you know, we know people who have long-term illnesses who get hundreds of tablets a month. And to our point about cannabis earlier, long-term pain management, and to your point about pain clinics, has been managed by, in particular, elderly gentlemen with cannabis. And they're swapping their prescribed OxyContin for cannabis. And the cannabis is cheap and the OxyContin is expensive, and it's criminality that wins. And it's the young people that are already marginalised and in impoverished areas of the community suffering the most.
Yeah. So
That's the short and the long of it.
And it's all circling back
It is.
to the same issue, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
So what would you do to change that if you could? If you went into politics tomorrow now, because you sound like a man that might well do that someday. Would you?
I actually would have. I probably would have. I don't know. Could I
Deal with
persuade it to it? I would very much like to. I really would love to. I don't know. Could I like my job at PSI involves me driving 3.5 hours east to spend the night on my own away from my wife, anxious in Dublin, get up in the morning, do my job, and then come home again. And I do that whatever 20 days a year. Been a politician and working out of Mayo from a lifestyle point of view, I'd have to really feel like I could make a change.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about that. Like,
And do you think a lot of politicians do go into it initially like you did the PSI, thinking you could change and maybe seeing then, oh Christ, actually,
it's not.
I can't
it's
do
not
much,
even
maybe.
like the government's fault, or I suppose the PSI, like in my case, fault. It's just the system.
Yeah.
It's the gears of the system, the machine. Like one individual can't come in and say, do you know what I've been thinking about for the last 5 years before I was elected as a politician? Do you want to be mad? If all contraceptives were free, wouldn't that be class?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Do you know
do it
what we
tomorrow.
should do? Make me Minister for Health and keep electing me, and I suppose whatever else is on the go, I'll sign up to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not how it works.
Yeah.
And in no real sane world are you going to get the guarantee that you'd make a change. But I would like to. Yeah. I very much value our president. And I think he's the best we have to offer. He's amazing. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's good. He's good because what he says carries. It's I love when he says something that maybe we all know he shouldn't really say.
Oh yeah.
It's outside of the function of the office.
Yes.
And everybody in Dublin starts fixing their ties. Well, since the president shouldn't.
And then if his wife writes something as well that she shouldn't.
She shouldn't. But you know what? They all start sweating a bit when he does, and I enjoy that. I really think he's a really measured guy. He wouldn't say anything that he doesn't mean.
Yeah.
And he has an awful lot of life experience that I think is really interesting. But anyway, I would. What we need to change really, like, is drug policy in Ireland would have a big impact on the futures of the young people in Ireland.
Well, I'd be right behind you anyway.
Yeah. Well.
That brings me to my last two questions that I always ask my guests, Mark. So, what advice would you give young people today? And what is the meaning of life?
Seek advice, young people. The best thing ever. I always thought growing up that my dad would have all the advice for me. my family was run like, I don't know what, my grandfather used to sit at the head of the table and he was a gorilla of a man. He was a giant man. And everybody got advice from him. And I thought, jeez, aren't I lucky now? I have all these men that I admire for advice. A load of uncles and my father in particular. And I can't remember what was on me one time. It's not that long ago. It's only about 5 or 6 years ago. Came to Dad looking for advice. And he said, do you know, the old fella said to me one time, best thing you could do now is plough your own furrow. Which basically meant I don't have any answers for you. But it was good advice because it made me go away and think like about what advice is and its value, and it also encouraged me to kind of make decisions myself. And off the back of that, I've sought advice from people that I barely knew, you know. When I was thinking about running for PSI, I rang up people I hardly knew that had lifetimes of experience in pharmacy, that knew all about it. I said, what do you think? They were like, geez, if you can get in, fair play to you. You know, give it a rattle, young fella.
Yeah.
And it was great because I got good encouragement out of it and it allowed me to develop and grow. And looking back at myself, I would very much like, even though I wouldn't have taken my own advice to take advice, I would very much like to tell 18-year-old me, will you take some advice from some of those people that are going out of their way to help you?
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
Okay.
What was the other question?
What's the meaning of life?
Progress.
Love it.
Progress is the meaning of life. Like, I believe that your brain is a square and structure is all encompassing. But without progress, you're missing the fundamental corner of that square, and without progress, the whole thing falls apart. So if you impose structure on your life and you have progress, it gives you a sense of control, which is the next corner, and that then leads you to clarity because you feel accomplished, you're moving, you've got some sort of direction going on, you know what you think, you know what you're going for, and then suddenly the third of the four corners reveals itself to you and it's clarity, and you start to see the wood for the trees and you start to think to yourself, oh, maybe I can do this. And then you realise the fourth corner is choice. You choose to do what you need to do or what you want to do or what's best for you. And I think then ultimately that lends itself to happiness. And as long as you're always progress driven, you'll do well. And it's true for health and academia and everything. When people stop making progress, they stagnate and they become unhealthy and unhappy, and it doesn't lend itself to just a fulfilling life, I believe anyway.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have so enjoyed this conversation.
I had a great time. I loved listening to myself.